If you've been watching the news, you know that war has been dominating the news cycle. And so I thought it would be good if we went over what the Catholic Church has to say about war. First, I'd like to say that I'm not talking about any particular war or any particular politicians or any particular political party. Nothing I have to say should indicate that I am in support or not in support of any politicians or anything like that. I just want to show what the Catholic Church teaches about what it calls jus ad bellum. So, jus ad bellum just means justice to go to or towards war, right? There are other kinds of things like jus in bello, which means like what are the rules for fighting? What are the rules for a just fighting of a war? This is going to address jus ad bellum, which means what are the rules for going to war? So this has nothing to do with fighting in war, but more like how do you know when it is just to go to war in the first place? How do you know what you should and shouldn't do as far as for going to war? Okay. First of all, you have these conditions, and they must all be met. So the first condition is that you have a just cause. This condition is going to prohibit wars of conquest or revenge or wars for economic gain. War is only permissible if you're going to confront a real and serious threat to innocent human life or to the common good or to fundamental rights, okay? You see in the Catechism, it's going to say that the damage inflicted by the aggressor on the nation or community of nations must be lasting, grave, and certain. This language almost admits that the kind of wars that are going to be just are going to typically be defensive wars, right? Where you are defending yourself against some unjust aggressor, okay? So the very first condition is that you have a just cause when you go to war. The second condition is that it's coming from a legitimate authority. You don't get to just decide to wage war on your own, okay? You have to be this duly constituted public authority to be able to declare war. You can't be a rogue general or a terrorist group or something like that. Individual or private groups can't initiate armed conflict on their own authority. This seems obvious, but maybe not so obvious, right? Legitimate authority. You got to have a legitimate authority. Number 3, you have to have right intention. This isn't so much quoted in the Catechism as much as it is just part of good Catholic moral theology, right? You have to understand that the purpose of war is going to be to restore justice and peace, not to extract vengeance or to dominate or something along those lines, right? Yeah, I think that goes without saying, but I included it in there just so that you could see that. And most people tend to include that in their conditions for a just war. You have to have some probability of success. I know there's a lot of people that might think that, hey man, you gotta, die hard, fight and go down fighting, blah, blah, blah. You have to actually have some probability of success before you declare war. I mean, you're talking about the kind of actions that are going to mean the loss of life, often the loss of innocent life. And so if you're saying I'm going to go to war, even though there's no chance that I could possibly win, that I don't have any clear objectives that would mean that I would win, well, then you probably shouldn't be declaring war, right? War is not the answer under those conditions, right? So you need some kind of probability of success. Proportionality is another one, right? Proportionality, it requires that you weigh the expected benefits against the foreseeable harms. That's going to include civilian deaths, environmental devastation, social disintegration. Your aim has to be peace, not just escalation, not just strike them back. You have to, and strike them back so hard that it makes them think differently about you. It's proportionality. It's not by itself a good enough reason to go to war, but it's one of the conditions that must be met. And you have to meet all these conditions. So, you can't produce evils and disorders that are graver than the evil to be eliminated. Okay. It also has to be a last resort. Okay. Armed forces can only be used when all the peaceful alternatives, I'm talking negotiations, sanctions, diplomacy, right? They all have to have been sincerely tried and found ineffective, right? So last resort, meaning you've tried other things, not just you don't think that other things will work, but that you've actually tried other things. And finally, you have no other thing that you can resort to other than the last resort, which is to say you're sort of forced into going to war. So I bring up all those points just to be able to say that war is a tricky thing to say whether or not it's just when you go to war. I understand why some people might think that certain situations or certain circumstances are good to go to war. You may have some information that other people don't have. What you can't do, though, is to simply say all war is bad. That's not true. The Catholic Church does not teach that pacifism is the only option. It may be a vocation, a personal vocation that you have to be a pacifist, but it's certainly not the Church's position as a whole. It's also not okay just to say, as long as the consequences turn out better, like as long as we're better off in the end, we can go to war, and or we should go to war as long as we turn out better than before the war happened. That isn't true. We are not consequentialists, right? We are not moral consequentialists that we only care about the consequences. In fact, we believe that as Catholics, we believe that you cannot perform some moral evil so that you produce some good outcome. That can't be it. So you're looking for a way to fight a moral war. You have to have all those conditions met. I hope that's helpful. I hope it clears up some things for you. And let's pray to God that we have peace.